Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kwabena and Jakia Center for African Studies. Today, we reflect on diaspora delight and disappointment in Ghana's year of return. A milestone that inspired reconnection, identity, and unity, yet also came along with challenges. As we explore the triumphs and setbacks of this historic initiative, let's engage, share insights, and find ways to strengthen the bridge between Ghana and the diaspora. Thank you for being here, and let's have a meaningful discussion with us. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone in Michigan, and good afternoon to those of us here in Accra. My name is Professor Tracy Keith Fleming. I am the acting director of the Kwabena and Jakia Center for Africana Studies at the African University of Communications and Business. I'd like to share some information regarding the mission of the Center for Africana Studies at our university as a part of my general welcome to you to our first installment of the Global African Diaspora Lecture Series. The Kwabena and Jakia Center for Africana Studies is committed to becoming a leading center for Pan-African scholarship and collaboration, bringing together scholars and thinkers from the African world to conduct research and deliberate on issues affecting the welfare and destiny of African peoples, and to disseminate their findings as widely as possible. Additionally, the center will be an incubator for innovative research to generate new knowledge that advances professional practice for those at the cutting edge of transformative development. The center contributes significantly to the university's mission of preparing lifelong learners to become innovative problem solvers and ethical leaders in the fields of communication, business, and related areas through excellence in interdisciplinary teaching, research, and collaboration at the local, regional, and global levels using a Pan-African framework, as well as to the university's core value of embracing African cultural values. And this aligns with our strategic plan for the university between the years 2022 and 2027. This university is not merely a university in Africa with an African label. It is an African universal university with an ethos and the explicit intent to produce graduates who fully understand, appreciate, and unapologetically manifest their Africanness in all spheres of their lives. The need to provide an education at the tertiary level that enhances the self-awareness of students as Africans led to the establishment in 2009 of the Center for Africana Studies at this university. The Kwabena and Jakia Center for Africana Studies was officially launched on the 22nd of June of 2015. It is an interdisciplinary institution dedicated to the creation and advancement of knowledge about the peoples and cultures of Africa and the African diaspora through scholarly research, teaching, and publication, aimed at the regeneration of African peoples and societies. We welcome you to the Global African Diaspora Lecture Series at the Kwabena and Jakia Center for Africana Studies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to introduce the speaker for today, Dr. Jakia Marie. So Dr. Jakia Marie is Assistant Professor of Interdisciplinary Studies and Program Coordinator of Africana Studies at Grand Valley State University. She earned a bachelor's degree in liberal studies with an emphasis on religion and non-profit leadership, and a Master of Education in College Student Affairs Leadership from Grand Valley. She earned an MA in Anthropology and a Ph.D. in Pan-African Studies from the University of Louisville and has taught at the University of Tennessee and Belmont University. Her work theoretically and empirically explores the nuances of Black identity across the US and globally. With many peer-reviewed published works, Dr. Marie strives to use research to better understand the complexities of global African experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker, Dr. Marie.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen. And there are some photos. If you cannot see the photos, they are not important. So don't worry at all.
Oh. I think we can hear you now.
Okay.
We got it. My sound was muted.
Perfect. Great. Okay. So we have it's about 2:17. So I think if we go until about 3 and leave the rest of the time for Q&A, I think that that'll be my goal here. So just a quick roadmap. I'll give you all a brief background about me. We will look at tourism and a background of tourism in Ghana. I'll talk about my research and the findings and kind of shape the discussion that will lead into, okay? So I'm Jakia. I'm at Grand Valley State University here in Michigan in the US. And Dr. Fleming was actually my mentor. And the only reason one of the main reasons I have a PhD is he told me to go to graduate school. So we can all thank him. And I'm sure he's telling all of you also to go to graduate school. So if he hasn't told you yet, be ready because he will tell you. So when we look at tourism, generally we have a few different types. So emancipation, cultural, and heritage. Emancipation can be under cultural and heritage, but they have their own special, I would say they have their special distinctions, okay? So if we look at emancipation tourism, this is very unique to the African diaspora. So I'm specifically looking at Jennifer Hasty's work, looking at Jamaica and Ghana, looking at Emancipation Day. All right. So this is from her work. These are excerpts from her work. Rawlings was in Jamaica in 98. And he witnessed Emancipation Day, August 1st. And he saw the celebrations and said, this needs to be celebrated on the African continent, specifically in Ghana. So he assigned Emancipation Day with the Ministry of Tourism. And this is why Emancipation Day is celebrated in Ghana, but with so much attention being paid to it, right? It's because Rawlings wanted to use it as a tool to attract people, but beyond just attracting people, wanted it to have I would say more meaning as well. We will get into that conversation a little bit more because it did not necessarily go well the first few times. We have cultural tourism. So according to the World Tourism Organization, it's just movements of persons for cultural tours, festivals, events, visit sites and monuments, right? To understand a culture better. And then heritage. The thing about heritage tourism is that heritage can be to understand someone's culture, but it can also be your own heritage, right? Going to understand a place where you have a significant linkage to. So you can see that you will have cultural tourism, which is a broad, more umbrella. Then you have heritage tourism, where an individual may have a personal tie to an area, and then, or personal tie or linkage, identity to an area, and then the other piece could be the emancipation tourism, where emancipatory tourism, where we're looking at liberation, we're looking particularly in the area of the black diaspora in its relation to the Middle Passage. Okay. So when we look at tourism, and this is a small tourist here. This was, when was this? 2021. So that's my son, actually. So African American travel has increased over the decades. And Ghana has become a popular destination for African Americans. Now, this is a citation from 2022. But many diasporic returnees want to connect emotionally and psychologically with Africa, right? While also escaping racism in the United States. But despite those intentions, many have experienced socially distanced relationships with Ghanaians, we'll say born and raised Ghanaians. So what does this mean? So a lot of these tensions are multifaceted, are layered. They cannot be understood just by it's not just from language. It's not just because of cultural differences. It's not just because of one thing or another, right? It is because of a number of things. So here's one example. So in the 90s, early 90s, and remember, we were talking about Rawlings, and he was like, oh no, we can really ramp up tourism with this particular demographic of people, with our connection, right? Obviously with our history. And we can look to Elmina and Cape Coast especially to draw people in. So there was a plan to restore the Cape Coast Castle and Elmina Castle, basically to make them watertight and to stabilize them more. And many African Americans felt excluded from the project. I mean, it just says, excuse that typo, many African Americans felt deliberately excluded from the project. And this created some tensions. Now, this is from some articles, and I'm sure there are people that still live in the area today that you can go and ask about what happened during this time. And they had a 3-day summit to discuss, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? And they made some changes to their original plan. But at the end of the day, there's still some tensions here, because there is a sense of ownership to this history, right? that many who don't have the history of displacement from West Africa don't necessarily feel as emotionally tied to, right? Not that we are all not tied to this history, because it is a shared history, but may not feel as emotionally tied to. So this was something that happened back in 30 years ago. And even today, we see something very, very similar taking place. So there are questions of the name. Are we going to say castles or dungeon? That discourse continues to happen. And all around this idea of how are we bringing people here to this site in the name of heritage seekers, in the name of tourism. So 2019 launched the Year of Return, right? Major landmark spiritual and birthright journey, inviting the global African family home and abroad. And this was to mark 400 years of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in Jamestown, Virginia, which is also very interesting, right? Because it is the Year of Return, and it's specifically talking about what is now the United States. That's the marker. So Emancipation Day is looking at emancipation in the Caribbean, right? That's Emancipation Day is actually celebrated in many countries. It's not a big thing in the United States. August 1st, that's not a big thing in the United States. So now we have the Year of Return, and this marker is in the United States. So although it says Global African Family, the year marker is specific to the United States. So let's see if this will play, and if you all can, if it's not loading, please let me know.
And I to tell the story of the resilience commemoration of one of the most momentous events of history, the commencement of the transatlantic trade, slave trade, which brought tens of millions of Africans to the Americas, North, Central, and South. We know of the horrors that accompanied that forced journey. We know of the brutalities that were meted out to them during their stay in the Americas. We know of the great difficulties they have encountered in attempting to assimilate and live and maintain their dignity in the Americas. We know of the extraordinary achievements and contributions they have made to the life of the Americas. And it is important that in this symbolic year, 400 years later, we commemorate their existence and their sacrifices. It was in anticipation of the year of commemoration that my great child.
Okay, so 400 years ago was not when chattel slavery started in the Americas. It wasn't. It was in Jamestown. So this was very US centric, even though it was framed as all of the Americas, which would make you think that it was North and South America. So you had a lot of celebrities who came, which we all know because they never stopped talking about it, especially Steve Harvey. But Steve Harvey never stops talking at all. So we had, transformative experiences for a lot of folks, right? And a number of people came to Ghana. Over 1 million people came to Ghana that year. 126 people of the diaspora were made citizens of the country, but many had lived in Ghana for over 20 years. So there was a citizenship ceremony in 2016, and then this was a second one in 2019. And it was they had already announced that the citizenship ceremony was going to happen. So this was known. This wasn't a last minute thing. They had announced that they were going to do this. And again, a lot of these people had lived in Ghana, had families in Ghana, that they were it made sense, right? It made sense. So I conducted research about a year and a half ago. I came to Ghana, I interviewed about 30 people actually. And my research was about identity development of American-born Africans who lived in Ghana. And my questions were, why did you move to Ghana? What were the reasons? How did you adjust? What was that adjustment like? And what I found during that research was that a number of people moved during the year of return. So here are the stories of 3 individuals, and these were people who came during 2019. So we have 3 stories. So we're going to talk about the influence of the year of return for some of these individuals. And some of these stories are positive. I would say they have positive, some have positive influences and negative, right? So we're going to kind of see different sides. And the interviews were in person and some were via Zoom or over the phone, which was nice to be in person. Most interviews were in person actually, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I would suggest if anybody does qualitative research. Okay, so first person is Mary, and this is copy and paste from our interviews, the transcripts from the interviews. And so Mary visited in 2019 and she moved to Ghana in 2021. So she came to Ghana in 2019 because of the year of return. She only came for a tour and she came for vacation. She lived in the United States and there was a murder in Texas. A woman was killed by the police in her home. And when that happened, she decided she needed to leave the country. And she reflected on her time in Ghana, and a chief told her, "Welcome home." And when he said that to her, she felt a sense of peace and she felt welcomed when he said that. So for her, it was a push and pull, right? The sense of peace in Ghana and the welcoming from the chief were the pulling factors to come to Ghana, and the systemic violence and racism in the United States were the push. So there were both of why she needed to leave the United States and come to Ghana specifically. But it was the year of return that was the reason that she visited to begin with. Okay. I mean, like I said, she came only for a vacation, and she said she would have possibly moved sooner, but due to lockdown restrictions, she couldn't make the move in 2020. And the same thing happened with LY. So she arrived in 2019. And she said that she felt like she was fleeing. She needed to get out of America and it was urgent. Again, systemic racism. The current president of the United States, who was then the president of the United States, she needed to get away from the madness. So she made the decision to move to Ghana. And because of the Year of Return campaign, it was an English-speaking country, which made it easier to navigate. And for her, the understanding of welcome home, return home, to her, she understood this as they want us to live there, right? Like, that was her understanding of welcome home, come home, not come just to visit. You can live here as well. And she did not stay in Ghana. She said that being in Ghana was something that she actually needed. It was an experience for her soul's evolution. She needed to experience Ghana. And I will say that for those who have not experienced places like the United States, places like Canada, places like South Africa, places these racist settler colonies that have institutionalized and systemic racism embedded in the countries, it's a different experience, okay? And it becomes a way where you navigate your world in a way where every step you take, you are always thinking about negative outcomes and how to avoid negative outcomes. So a number of people talk about being in a place like Ghana where things are different, not saying that things are easier, but you don't have to always think about avoiding negative outcomes solely because of who you are, right? You don't always have to think of, can I, right, like talked about the shooting in Texas. Can I call the police for help right now? Is that a question? Like, for most people around the world, that wouldn't be a question that they would have to ask, because they don't worry if their police will actually kill them because of the color of their skin in their own home, when they're the ones who called the police for help. Or the police came for a wellness check. Those types of situations where, how did this even happen? Most people don't even fathom this as a part of someone's reality, but this is, for many of us in these types of countries, are realities, things that we think about all the time. And we have to think, is this worth it? Is it worth calling the police? Is it worth calling the paramedics? Is it worth going to the hospital for this illness? Or could it lead to something more because of the color of my skin, right? So this was another thing that she brought up, was that she was able to shed that peace. She didn't have to think about that other part of worry, right? But at the same time, thinking about the year of return, she didn't say that it was purely propaganda, but it was not well thought out. In that, she is saying that she did not think that the majority of the Ghanaian population was prepared for the influx of tourists and possible migrants coming to the country. And that's important to note when we think about cultural differences and things of the like. So she says they need to know that we're expecting to come back to family, not to be brown or brunies. in that many people are being called Obruni, 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 and take offense to that because they're like, I'm not white, you know, like, what do you mean? And many Ghanaians will not think anything of it, right? They're like, I'm not meaning to be offensive. It's just, it is what it is. But others will take offense to it. And then that can cause tensions and things like that. So the lack of programming, I guess we could say, to help people transition if they wanted to move to Ghana, how to learn about Ghanaian cultures and life. Where are the resources to learn different languages? Where are the resources to learn the cultural norms? In the United States, we use both hands. It's very normal to use both hands. And it takes effort to not use your left hand. So sometimes people will use their left hand, not because they are trying to be rude, but because they just don't think about it. It's just, hey, here you go. Someone has to tell them, hey, here, do not use your left hand. Who is going to tell them if they come to Ghana and do not know any Ghanaians? So these are some of the areas where if the messaging is come home, who is going to teach you the house rules? Essentially. And then the last person is Kofi. He visited in 2019. He did not know that it was the year of return. He visited in early 2019. He learned it was the year of return, and he said, I'm coming back. And sure enough, he did. He came back later in 2019, and he did not leave for 2 years. So he ended up moving in 2019 on accident. And now he lives in Ghana. He's really great. But one thing that he said was he picked up a better identity as a man. So the year of return, even though he was already visiting Ghana, the year of return was almost an excuse to come back, right? Like he enjoyed Ghana so much, the year of return became a reason for him to come back to Ghana. And he was retired, so he had time. But he was very articulate about, again, how in these types of nations, there when I talked about those walls that we have to build for our own safety and peace of mind, he talked about being in Ghana and being allowed to break those walls down and shed those walls, and he called that his healing process. And being in Ghana out of the Western world has allowed him to heal and focus on himself. And he talked about that as coming into a sense of manhood, a better man. And this is an older gentleman in his 50s. Being a man in his own sense, not in the Western sense. And I thought that was so moving, and I still find his story is one of the most moving stories because it is so personal. And it is so, I think, his self-reflection, and he made it about himself and not about others. So the influence of the year of return: increased tourism, many positive experiences. There were mixed messages, and there were some consequences. So increased tourism, we can see on the right, this is from from the Ministry of Tourism. You can see the changes in percentages, 2018 to 2019. Obviously, 2019 to 2020, it drops because of lockdown, and then went right back up because they started the Beyond the Return and wanted to ramp tourism right back up. The number one country for tourism was the United States. Number two, Nigeria, and then number three, the UK. So it worked, brought a number of people in to the country. And again, the point of the year of return was not migration, was not immigration, it was tourism, right? But there were mixed messages, right? So was the message to come home, or was the message to invest? Was the market Americans or the entire African diaspora? And was there a true push to assist people to adjust to life in Ghana? I think another question is, who were the main beneficiaries of this initiative? Were the beneficiaries those who traveled to Ghana, and what were those benefits? Or were the beneficiaries those in the tourism industry, or were the beneficiaries those of the African world, right? So depending on what lens we use, we can ask ourselves, if we throw a Pan-African lens to this discussion, can we say that we have strengthened a Pan-African identity because of the year of return? Personally, I don't know, because traveling to a country for a few days does not do much. This is just in general, right? It doesn't matter. Investing in a country does not do much if you do not take the time to learn the cultures, the norms, the traditions, and the values of that particular area. And if you do not value those cultures, those norms, those traditions, and a number of people I know that I've interviewed, a number of people simply did not know much about Ghana, did not know much about Ghanaian history, did not know much about the Ghanaian cultures. Most people did not speak any Ghanaian indigenous languages, were not attempting to learn. And yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but not even attempting to learn. So when we think about a Pan-African identity and then Pan-African consciousness, there may be some who are building this Pan-African consciousness, but did the year of return influence that at all? Did it make a dent in it? I don't know if it made a big dent. So it seemed very different from maybe the idea that Rawlings had with the Emancipation Day, because when there was the Emancipation Day, there were critiques that the Emancipation Day initiatives were just another way of selling those of the diaspora again in another way. And that could be another way of looking at the year of return. Of, are we trying to simply get money out of the diaspora, right? Because invest is what we hear in almost every conversation. Now, at the same time, you do invest in what you love, right? But intentionality is what needs to be there. So I think that when we talk about the main beneficiaries, we need to consider what lens we want to look at it through. There are pros and cons in all of it. If we look at it from a Pan-African lens, there are some who can definitely say that their Pan-African consciousness grew. Their stories would be much more involved than a 5-day or 6-day tour, right? That could be the start, but it would never be the end. And I think that we need to make sure that we are giving space to that larger conversation, that is beyond just tourism, that's beyond the year of return, that the year of return was just a gateway to maybe open someone's eyes, open someone's heart, to lead them into that conversation. Next, consequences. Housing prices are skyrocketing in Ghana, in Accra especially. Now, we have to be very, very careful here, though. This is what happens anywhere, which is, again, why I talk about who benefits from this, because these developers are benefiting, which, again, we talk about investing and intentionality. Where are we investing? Why are we investing? Intentionality, because we knew this would happen. When there's an influx of people, there's going to be an influx of demand. Supply and demand. It's very simple. We know that this is what happens. So we knew that there was going to be a higher demand for housing, especially if you're telling people come home. Okay, well, they want somewhere to live. Housing prices are going up, and the average Ghanaian is having a difficult time affording homes. And whose fault is that? Right? Now, we really have to be very critical when assessing the issue, because what tends to happen is, and this, if you look at this globally, right, this is what they do. You see this in politics. They will try to blame a group for one situation, one crisis here or one crisis there, when the issue is not a group. The issue is actually the system and the lack of, I was saying, the lack of planning on the part of organizers, and the lack of politicians and planners and organizers when it comes to different things. So the fact that they didn't put a cap on housing prices, the fact that they haven't regulated certain things, that's why prices continue to go up, because they can go up. So I just want to be clear. So diaspora influx hikes cost of living for Ghanaians. It's not the diaspora influx that hikes the cost of living. It's a number of other things that's hiking the cost of living, that it's easy to blame the influx of the diaspora on it. But it still can be considered gentrification. No, that's true. But I wouldn't call it gentrification of the diaspora. Gentrification can happen with and without people. Gentrification is off of companies. So I just want us to acknowledge that these are the realities, but there is no group of people, but the diaspora isn't behind the realities. Rather, it is the planners that are behind it. It is the companies that's behind it. So there are consequences to this, positive and negative. We have people who are in Ghana that have had transformative experiences and feel such a sense of peace and love and centeredness that no amount of therapy or meditation can bring. And I think that is something that that we need to acknowledge, And at the same time, there have been negative consequences that in many ways could have been avoided because we've seen what has happened across the world when there's an influx of tourists, when there's an influx of visitors, whether it be through tourism, whether it be through migration or otherwise to local economies and in other sectors. So I'm very interested in hearing what you all think. I'm very interested in learning your experiences and answering any questions that you all may have. When we talk about your return, it is not um it's not all positive, it's not all negative, but we cannot make it we cannot look at it in one way or the other, right? It had significant positive outcomes in many ways. Financially for the country, I think reputation wise for the country, I think for individuals, for different groups in different sectors, most definitely. And there also were some negative outcomes that also came from it that now we have to work to reconcile, that we'll see what happens in the coming years. But there may be some brainstorming that can even happen here that could possibly come up with we can possibly come up with some answers to see. So I'm very interested to hear what you all have to say, what you all think. So any questions?
So thank you, Jakia, for that wonderful presentation. Very insightful. I hope that you all can still hear me online. We have an energetic group of young people here who I'm sure have some questions, and they are processing what types of questions they want to ask. So I'll begin, and maybe this will inspire them to ask some additional questions. What advice, and this is a question I've been asked myself, so I'm asking you because I feel you can give me some great insight, but I've also made an addition. What is the most important advice you would give someone from the diaspora moving to Ghana? That's the first part of the question. But I think particularly as I'm considering my students here, many of whom are very interested in studying abroad and international opportunities, what's the most important advice you would give someone from a country like Ghana moving to diaspora destinations, such as the United States or other Western countries?
So anyone moving to Ghana or moving to Ghana or anywhere else, I would first visit at least once, but preferably many times. Take your time and get to understand the area. It is very easy to go to a place once and fall in love and say, I want to be here. And then once you go the second time and third time and fourth time, you realize, oh, the paint is chipped. Oh, there's a hole here. Oh, this here, right? So I actually met a number of people that I interviewed that moved to Ghana had never stepped foot in the country before. They just came and then talk about how much they hate it. What do you expect? Like what do you expect? I would never move to Germany. Ever. And I've been there before, and I can't imagine going to Germany, never have been there, thinking that it was going to save me. I just don't understand. So a lot of people are just I don't know, they think, I guess because it's Africa, that it's amazing, and I don't, critical thinking is not widespread, essentially. So yeah. And I think that for folks coming to other parts of the world, understanding that it is difficult to visit first, with visas and everything like that, that's not easy. It's not always easy to get a visa first. I would say read more, read more from different perspectives and watch the news less. The news, the Western media is a propaganda machine, and it will never tell you the full perspective or the full story. But when you read, the books are usually uncensored, like less censored. Let me say that. The books are usually less censored, and you are getting more stories and a more critical lens from people such as you're getting more Pan-African scholars. You're not going to find a Pan-African scholar or perspective on CNN. You are not going to find a true critical race scholar or anyone in that type of arena on any mass media outlet from the UK or from the US. So someone to tell you the realities of living here, you won't find it. So watching the news every day, you will only get fed propaganda and lies, essentially. You'll be told 2% of one person's reality, but 24 hours. Okay, when tourists come to Ghana on a return, do they feel they are contributing to the country in some way, or do they only have the lens of gaining knowledge or experience for themselves? I would say that one is mixed. Some people, I was actually on a flight in November, and one woman was so excited. It was their first time visiting Ghana. They took a family trip, and they ended up their family adopted a school. So they decided they were going to put all of their family resources together to buy books and things for this school, which I have mixed feelings about. But they were very excited, like they learned a lot, and they wanted to give back, which is, I think, very refreshing. And I think so I think a lot of people want to give, you know what I mean? I think a lot of people in their own way want to give to the community. They want to be a part of the community. I think there are two issues. One issue is that people don't know how, right? That's why I said I had mixed feelings. People don't know how to give back, which makes it very easy to essentially be swindled. When you don't understand a system, it's easy to fall into a trap. That's just a universal thing, right? And I've seen a lot of people fall into that just because they care so much and they feel so connected, and first time on the motherland, like all of that and all of that energy. And then someone takes advantage of that. They exploit that. And I think that that's also part of my I think that's also part of my concern with this idea of heritage tourism is I question if this is emotional exploitation, right? When you have people who are hoping to connect and you know they want to connect to this land that is ours, right? Is collectively ours, and how folks are intending to take advantage of that emotional eagerness, right? So to the question, yes, people, and I would say like for the heritage tourism, there are ways to do it, and I see some people do it amazingly. Like I see some people do a very fine job, very, I would say very careful, very, I would say they take their time, they ask questions, they 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 aren't trying to take advantage of people essentially. But then I see others where I really question. I'm like, you paid how much for what? For what? No, 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 no. But it's just because they don't know, right? They just don't know. So I think it's the same thing where some people they come on tours and they get excited and they actually do want to connect, and they know since they're away, the only way they can connect is really with money. Um, and sometimes people get exploited at the end of the day. And others, and then I know other people who they just want to party. They make it very clear they only want to party. And I appreciate the honesty. Let's be honest. At least you are being clear. So we know.
That was wonderful, Jakia. As you know, I'm very impressed with the work that you are doing. And so I want to give some others an opportunity to ask a question in-house. Please.
So good afternoon. And this has actually been an insightful lecture. We're actually learning a lot because you are the experienced, you are the ones that mostly you have lots of challenges coming into the country, trying to assimilate and everything. So obviously the Beyond Ghana initiative and the rest it's something that was meant to do something good and everything, but it came with a lot of consequences, like you said. If you were given the opportunity, let's say you are given a book or the podium to plan the whole thing again, what would you add and what would you take out of it? That way it will be something that will be great for everybody. Thank you.
Okay. That is a very good question. I think that I would add you know how they have tour they have their, and they just redid it, I think maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, re-verified all of their certified tour guides. I probably would have worked with the major companies such as TripAdvisor, because that's who people book tours with. And since this is from the government, and worked with them to see if there could be a badge that said this is a verified year of return tour. Next, I would have, I mean, it would have taken work, but that's okay. When people apply for their visas, when you send in your visa back, because we have to mail in our passport and then you receive the visa back. A QR code, just a sheet of paper with a QR code. Scan the QR code with a resource list. And that resource list could be, this is a list of our verified Tree learning schools, God learning schools, Fonte learning schools, right? I would have tried to organize resources and at least empowered people with those resources. Because we know how Ghana is. You can get this if you know someone, right? I dash someone some money. Okay, here you go. Now I'll do this for you. I'll do this for you, right? But what if as soon as you apply for the visa, I give you, that's this place, that's this place, that's this place, verified by the Ministry of Tourism. And so now you know. Imagine if half of the people who visited Ghana had taken even just a 1-week tree class, language class, and knew how to say just 10 words. And felt a little more connected to the country, right? It may have made it easier for people to navigate. I think also something like these, very simple. These are the customs of the country. Very quick. And it could have been a QR code sent in with the visa. And I know that that didn't happen because I had to apply for a visa in 2019 and I did not receive that. I would have done something like that, just since the plan was to bring a lot of people to the country. How do you ensure that so many people know what to do in this country? Because it's different. Now, this is not to say that when you visit a country, you don't have any responsibility to learn about where you're going, right? This isn't saying that all of the responsibility is on the Ghanaian government. I am not saying that at all. But if it was up to me, I'm answering your question. If it was up to me and I could do one thing, I would have at least given the individuals the opportunity. I wouldn't say the opportunity. I would have given them the resource to learn themselves. If they choose not to learn, that is on them. But I at least gave them the resources because sometimes it is difficult. I travel all the time and trying to learn the customs and traditions is actually not as easy as one would imagine. So thank you for your question.
Are there any questions online? If so, you can raise your hand. We're still, yes, please. We have another question from Ghana. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I would also want to add up to what my sister said. Since I believe it's something that will be reoccurring again, would you have a team to implement these suggestions you are putting across, which can, I believe it would actually help in getting everything done as you're saying, and then even get more people on board? Would you be able to do that?
Oh, most definitely. Things cannot be done in a vacuum. And my idea of leadership is just you have experts handle what they are experts in, you know. So and I know that when they did the year of return, they had there was a team involved. But I will say that the conversations that I have seen between there even seems to be some, I don't even know how to say it. There seems to be, I don't know if friction is the word. I don't think friction is the word. Different views on the year of return versus Emancipation Day, even though a lot of the same people were at the table here. I don't know, so I can't speak on it in depth, but I've just seen and heard conversations related to that. But I think that it definitely needs to be a team, but the team needs to be very large, right? It needs to be a large team so that it can be more effective.
Sure. So I believe that with that implementation and then getting the Ghanaian government on board, it would actually help in getting quite a number of others who haven't heard of this emancipation or the year of return would actually be interested in getting on board to be able to experience what it feels like.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. I agree. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Jakia.
Good afternoon.
Yes, so my question is that your research, I think you said you spoke to about 3 people, right? And so that in a way it is qualitative. Now, if you were to expand it, do statistics, try to find out from a whole more people that moved in after the year of return to reside in Ghana, to find out their experiences and all that, would you say that you would have more people who maybe have regretted moving in because they didn't really make they didn't make a critical decision. They didn't think about it critically before making those decisions, and that if maybe, when would you say to those people that they should have taken their time and that they made a rash decision? What would you say to those people?
So I interviewed 30 people. But this presentation, I only shared the stories of 3. If I did surveys, the thing is that a number of people that I interviewed that moved to Ghana after 2018, 2019 actually moved out. They've actually already left Ghana. So I met one family, they live in a different African country, actually, and I met someone else who also moved back to the US. I met someone else who is trying to move out of Ghana, but hasn't yet. So there are yeah, so I think that, but a number of them did, that is what they said, that it was a decision that they didn't think, I wouldn't say they didn't think through. Again, a number of people had not visited Ghana before. At the same time, people felt a sense of urgency because of the political state in the US. So they felt that they were in an unsafe environment and had to leave. So it's difficult because I think it was a rash decision? Yes. At the same time, if you feel that your life is in danger, I understand why you would want to leave immediately. So I think that more so the rash decision is more so why Ghana, more than a place where you may be more familiar with. So for example, Canada is very close, right next door. It is a neighboring country, and Canada is not very different from the US culturally, logistically, not very different. And if you have a passport, you can go to Canada. And you don't need a visa unless you stay for an extended period of time. Even other countries that are just culturally more similar to the US, could be places, different European countries are just more similar, which will require less adjustment. And I think that that's the piece that people struggled with the most, is that the expectation was that because we are African, the adjustment will be easy, as if we are a homogenous group. And even the idea, you know, because the one LY, I'd like that she's interesting. I liked her a lot. Because she said we expect to come home to family. And I understand, and I even agree with her. But families argue all the time. Sometimes you may get along better with a stranger than your family. So I think that the expectation was that because we have a similar heritage, that things would be easy, but the reality is that things may be easier in an environment where you have a similar upbringing. And I don't think that a number of people thought about that part, about a similar environment or a similar, again, day-to-day life. And I mean, again, people thought a lot about not wanting to have to deal with racism. And that's why they didn't want to go to Canada or the UK, which I understand. But I mean, we have to understand that for everything we give, we also take something else, right? So even though we gave away racism, we then had to now deal with, you know, we have other problems too. They're just different. So
What question? No. Okay, I'm not sure if we have additional questions online,
Nope.
but I'll take an opportunity to ask a question that I think would resonate with both audiences. Ghana has a very storied history of African diasporic migration to the country. Could you tell us, based on your research, some insights from a generational perspective, from, say, migrants during the Nkrumah era compared to migrants today? Could you give us a little insight on a generational perspective?
Yeah, I think the changes have been quite drastic. The Nkrumah era, so Kwame Nkrumah invited a number of people, prominent individuals, to Ghana's independence celebrations. And a number of people moved to Ghana temporarily, some permanently. So we know a few folks that came to Ghana for a few years, or a few days, right? And it was more so, when we speak in the context of the United States, this was during the civil rights movement of the United States. And again, fleeing racism, which was nice because you can walk around and you do not have to worry about walking on the other side of the street because a white person is walking down the street and you cannot cross their path because that's something that people had to do. And there was a personal invitation from the president to be in the country and also to celebrate this time and to be a part of this time of development as a new nation at this time. Now, there was another wave, and I would say this wave between the 80s and 90s, and most of the individuals during that time had a true Pan-African ideology. And there was one person that I interviewed who his first time in Ghana was during this era, and he is a very strong Pan-Africanist. I learned a lot during that interview. So we saw the 60s, we have a time of civil rights, of everyone working for independence during this time. And now we have moving from independence to strong Pan-African ideology, Pan-Africanism, working together, cross-cultural, intercultural ideology. I think that from the folks that I've interviewed, most of the people that I interviewed actually moved to Ghana 2017 and later. Now, that's not most of the people who live in Ghana, though, because a lot of folks who live in Ghana, who have been in Ghana for a long time, have done interviews so many times they don't do it anymore. People who have written about their experiences have not portrayed them in a positive or accurate light. Because even if you share negative experiences, that's okay. Because if they tell you that they have a negative experience, that's fine, but it needs to be accurate. And people have not shared accurate experiences. And people have actually lost their jobs because people have written stories in the news. There are not many Black Americans in certain parts of Ghana. So even if you do not share their actual name, everyone knows who that person is. So some people have actually lost their jobs because of the some people have actually lost their jobs because of giving interviews. So the folks who have been in Ghana for a long time have simply not done stopped giving interviews. So my data is a bit skewed in that it doesn't represent the full body, right? It doesn't accurately or proportionally represent the body of people that live here. So the people who are 2017 and later, I would say I would put them into two categories. One category would be people who are here for love and people who are here for capitalism. There are a few people who are married, have families, want to have families, and then you have those who only want to do business. And I want to be clear, because you own a business does not make you a capitalist. But there are individuals who are only here for business. And I want to make sure to distinguish the two. If, like, we all need to pay our bills and eat. So we need to make money. Having a business, please, by all means, do it. But a number of the people 2017 and later, their primary focus is only to make money in Ghana, not to learn anything about the cultures, not to learn any languages. Most people don't have any friends that are Ghanaians, versus those in between, those who moved to Ghana before 2017, before 2019, before the year of return, have lots of Ghanaian friends, live in Ghanaian neighborhoods, shop at local shops. They don't go to Malcolm to buy they don't go to Malcolm, they don't go to ShopRite. They go to the local shops. They are interested in Ghana, in being integrated into Ghanaian societies. So there has been a bit of a shift. And again, I think that goes to part of the question of the year of return and asking people to invest in the country, which is investing in the country is not bad at all. I think that in a global capitalist world that we live in, this is how countries survive. And I think that we as a people work better when our money is also together. I'm not even against that. But for our money to be together, we also have to be together. And that requires us to live in community with one another. Right? So for folks to not necessarily know much about Ghana, I think it makes it a bit difficult, right? I think it makes it a bit difficult for them to make a claim that they love the country when they love the money that they make in the country. And there's a difference. And that's what I see a little bit more in the more recent moves. And those are just from the stories that I've gathered. I cannot say that that's everyone. Again, the sample is not representative of the population, because the people who moved and have been here for 15 years have tended to stay quiet, mind their business, stay at peace, because that's how they like it. Yeah. So we have the independence, then the true Pan-African movement. And now we are looking more into investments and capitalism and really capitalistic motives more than anything. And I've even asked questions of capitalism masquerading as Pan-Africanism. It's not Pan-Africanism. It's just money. You're trying to exploit people. And we can call a spade a spade. We can call capitalism capitalism. That's totally fine. Just say you want people's money, but don't try to guilt people in saying that this is Pan-Africanism. It is not. But I've seen that a little bit more. I mean, people have actually explicitly stated that in the interviews, is that I am here to make money. That's my goal here, is to make money. That's why I am in Ghana, is to make money.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marie. I think we have one additional question in the audience. Yes.
Okay, so I heard everything you said. One question I want to ask is, do you, diasporans in Ghana, do you have a community like maybe on social media or physically? Do you people meet up to discuss this issues or these concerns, and do you channel it to the government, and how do you channel it, and how is the feedback, like the response from the government, and is there any form of accountability that the government gives you whenever you channel your frustrations? I would like to know that.
Well, there are a few organizations. There is the African American Association of Ghana. There is the Caribbean Association of Ghana. There is the, Craig. Dr. Fleming, I do not want to slaughter it. In the central region.
Central region of African descendants. Yes.
Yes, that one. Yeah, so there are a number of groups which I truly appreciate, and I think that they're very necessary because people need to have community, right? I think this is just a human thing. And I think no matter where you are, you need to have community. When I was in Louisville, Kentucky, I was a part of the Ghana Association of Louisville. And I went to all of the Ghana Independence Day things. And there was one Nigerian family there because there was no Nigerian association. So we accepted them. But like associations are just very normal. They were like, we'll allow this one. It was fun, right? Like we all just have fun. So, but there was no Nigerian association. There's a Ghana Association of Louisville. Very fun group. So there are associations, and I think these associations are necessary. I think these associations are also places where you can celebrate your culture as well. So example, you can talk about a lot of people have gone to the same college. They can talk about being at the same university, or they can talk about different music and things like that because they, will have the same understanding. The advocacy for the government, though, is if they do it through the association, will be through different committees of the association. Now, as far as grievances are concerned, There haven't been, as far as I know, too many, but examples have been, I would say a lot of tensions have actually been more with, as you saw with the presentation, have been more with like within Cape Coast and things like that. And everyone knows exactly who to go to. And like Rabbi is a very prominent member in the Central region, and he is a individual who is very diplomatic and handles a lot of communication between different government officials and different concerns. I would say same thing with positive things, like the associations will speak to the U.S. ambassador when it comes to different topics. So through the associations and through the committees of the associations, topics will get brought up. And the other thing too is that a number of issues that people may have, they bring it to the associations, and individuals within those associations can answer the questions or handle it. So examples that I brought up is that like people not knowing tree, right? Okay. My idea when I was asked the question was I would put this all on the website. These are 3 or 4 schools or companies that the government has verified. You can go through them. I know for sure that the African American Association of Ghana, people have asked, who do you all go to for lessons? And individuals will share, I've worked with this person, I've worked with this company, and individuals will make their choices. We just answer questions as they arise. But there's no central location but there was no central location, like again, when people receive their visas, on where you can learn different things. So the associations become very useful if people learn about the associations to receive information. But it's only when people learn about the associations can they start to get certain information. And then we use WhatsApp, but in the US, WhatsApp is not very popular because we all have free texting and free phone calls. So we don't need a second app to have group messages. So I didn't have WhatsApp until I left the country and realized that that's what people use. So a lot of folks around here, you will not find that they have WhatsApp downloaded because it's just not common unless you are speaking with people abroad. So even having that platform is not as common for folks. So it's even more difficult for people to find if you aren't already in Ghana or accustomed to traveling and interacting with people across time zones and country codes. There is a question in the chat. I can read it.
Yes, please.
Okay. How do you think Ghana can protect itself from being exploited? And are there agencies that can help to ensure that businesses are not there to exploit the country? How can they adopt a community mission to increase business that employs social responsibility processes that protect the culture, people, and the country? Sorry for the multiple questions. Your research is very interesting. Oh, no question. No problem. We love multiple questions. So yes, these are some of the things where I think business standards are necessary. This is where we increase minimum wage, right? Or do some type of staggering where if your company brings in this amount of money, then your employees need to make this amount of money. But that can only happen if government officials are not themselves corrupt. So I don't know how that happens with, I honestly don't know how that would happen in reality, right? Like ideally, it could be different policies and things like that, but in reality, I really don't know. But I do think that, I mean, some very simple things, they get themselves, as in like many countries, get themselves caught up with taking out loans and from different countries and all of this aid, which then allows other countries to have a hold on them. Because ideally, it would be Ghanaians who were building all of these different apartment buildings that keep popping up that remain empty, right? But instead, that's not the case. It would be Ghanaians that are building everything that's being built, right? But that's not the case because that's not the case countrywide, because there are many loans that are being taken out, which means that they then tell you who they're going to hire and things like that, or who gets to be hired, which also places it imbalances the economy. So I think it goes, I think that it's multi-layered here. But and this is not Ghana specific, but any country that takes control over their economy, right? Which is at the beginning, at the initial stages, is difficult, but then it gets better. Take control, stop taking everybody's money, so that you are in control and can say, we're hiring who we want to hire. We're putting caps on how much a 1-bedroom apartment will cost, in what area, right? Those types of things. I think that can change what the community looks like, because a lot of these apartments are so empty. And what I also see, particularly when it comes to housing, is that a lot of these tours now have investment expos as a part of the tour. And then I saw somebody advertising an apartment and it was so far out, for like $120,000, 1-bedroom apartment. And someone who has never been to Ghana would think that if they're from New York City and they've never been to Ghana, they would probably think that this is a great deal, because a number of people travel, generally speaking, and they compare things to where they're from. This is why people spend so much money on housing in Ghana, is because they're comparing it to housing from where they're from. If you're from a big city, New York is not cheap at all. So they come and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cheap. No, this is not cheap. This is actually extremely expensive. New York is unnecessarily expensive. Why are you paying so much money to live with rats? I don't understand why people pay so much to live in New York City myself, personally, with those rats. But that's neither here nor there. So I saw this place that was this far out, it was this expensive, and I said, these people are going to pay for this. They will probably not come back to Ghana for another 5 years, and this building will remain empty. No one will take care of it, but they've spent the money and now raised the price of housing in this area, because people know that they can make this much money for this building here, right? So now everywhere around, the price is going to keep going up for people who will never even come stay one night here, for another 5 years. So those are some of the things that like we need to just put caps on housing around places. As an
Thank
example.
you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have one more question.
Hey, Jakia, how you doing?
I'm good, Prof. How are you?
I'm incredible. What's up? I just wanted your thoughts on this thing. Is it pre-Panafest? I remember most of the engagement between mainlanders and the diaspora, from America in particular, were led by people in religion. I remember Leon Sullivan started, and the Nation of Islam in particular, they had like a presence in Nima and all that. So what happened after Panafest? How were they taken out, and do they still play a role?
Oh, Panafest still happens. And the and religious leaders are still a part of Panafest and the organizing of Panafest. Oh yeah, definitely. Now, I've participated in Panafest maybe twice. Yeah. I think I participated in it twice, and I've been to a few organizing meetings. I would say that the organizing meetings that I was a part of, there were no religious components, but I wasn't deep in it. So I can't speak in depth, but I do know that the organizations are still, individuals from different religious organizations are still a part of Panafest, and yeah.
So I would like to ask whether there are any more questions online.
Nope.
Okay, so in-house, there are no more questions. I think we are okay. If it's food, we are full. Yeah, that is what I would say. So, and thank you very much on behalf of myself, everyone here. I would say we've actually learned a lot. To those online, thank you for joining us. This is the Kwabena Nketia Center for Africana Studies, and this is the first program that we had for the semester. We'll be having subsequent ones because I'm sure people would like to listen to you as time goes on. So thank you very much.